Dear ones, in 2016, the Hungarian Unitarian Church, the National Széchenyi Library from Budapest, organized a conference here in Kolozsvár, Romania, about the liturgy and rituals in the 16th to 19th century Transylvania. In this conference, I held a lecture about the rights and regulations of bishop visitation of 17th century Transylvanian Unitarians, and I stated that no ritual history synthesis was made in the Hungarian language area. But from the 19th century onwards, ethnographers, social and music historians, as well as researchers from various denominations, deal with the history of rites and holidays using international literature. Nowadays, researchers on ritual behaviors has opened up new dimensions. Researchers come up with interesting topics. In 2016, in the context of European Football Championship, Soccer Championship in France, a French ethnologist, Christian Bromberger, and his colleagues began researching football. They are looking for the answer to how the use of songs, slogans, logos can be a cohesive force that holds fans together and provides a community experience, drawing parallels between football and religious ceremonies. What is very important to us, for the Hungarians, Romanians, and Germans living in Transylvania, Romania, is the resistance that many brave people have expressed against communism, both as individuals and communities. Our grandmothers, grandfathers, mothers, and fathers lived under communism for more than 40 years, from 1948 to 1989. I personally lived for 21 years. Anyone who has not lived in such communist dictatorship can't even comprehend how amazingly difficult these years have been. I say this because many people in the Western world, including the United States, glorify these communist ideas, but beside the theory, they don't know what is like in practice. Communism is synonymous with fascism. In Romania, or in general in Mid and Eastern Europe, the researchers of the former communist states start to explore the anti-communist resistance. In the north of Romania, in Szigetul Marmației, Máramaros-sziget in Hungarian, during the communist regime there was one of the cruelest prisons where political prisoners were held. After the communist regime collapsed, from the prison of Sziget, Máramaros-sziget, was founded the house, the research center, and the museum of the memorial of the victims of communism and of the resistance. The Romanian anti-communist resistance took various forms and typologies. For example, anti-communist armed resistance within paramilitary partisan groups. Circles of secular and clerical intellectuals formed groups for reflection and maintenance in alive the anti-communist ideas. Anti-communist students' movements, which culminated in anti-Soviet and anti-communism protest in 1956, the year of the Hungarian Revolution. Workers' movements strike, sabotages, which culminated in the miners' strike in the Jiu Valley in 1977, the workers' strike in Brașov in 1987. Peasant movements materialized in protest and uprising directed against the collectivization of agriculture. Civil society protest actions against the demolition project of 7,000 and 8,000 villages, which later materialized in form of solidarity of international public opinion in 1988, known as Operation Villages Romanians. Repression by the communist authorities over the resistance movement took various forms. In 1948 to 1949, according to the Soviet model, the Security Department was organized with the aim of repressing conspiracies, sabotage, and other hostile action against the communist state. The punishments applied to the members of the resistance movement included death sentence, forced labor for life, long years of detention, which lasted until 1964, the year of the mass release of political prisoners in Romania. In that time, 16 Unitarian ministers, theological professors, and theological students were imprisoned. A very common tactic of the Security Department was infiltrating informators among anti-communist groups or the recruitment of informants from the population. I have a personal story. In January 1988, I had to enroll in the Romanian army as soldier. I was a working soldier in Bucharest. For Ceausescu, we built today's parliament building, one of the largest in the world after the Pentagon. We unloaded railway wagons in 2 shifts. One day a senior military officer called me and recommended that I no longer have to shovel hard all day. He wanted to be assigned to work in the kitchen. He told me that I could eat as much as I wanted, but I would have to report weekly in his office what I saw, what I heard in that week, in the kitchen, and in the dining room, etc. I firmly refused and said I wouldn't be an informant. I'd rather go and shovel. Luckily, he didn't try to recruit me anymore, and so for a year I just shovel. We didn't even see a gun. Our weapon was the shovel. I ended the military service in May 1989, and in December, dictator Ceausescu was executed. During communism, there were many who opted for nonviolent resistance. This form of protest can be traced back to Gandhi. Here is a quotation from Richard Attenborough's 1982 film about Gandhi. Gandhi to Viceroy Lord Chelmsford: "You don't think we are just going to walk out of India? Yes, in the end you will walk out, because 100,000 Englishmen simply cannot control 350 million Indians if those Indians refuse to cooperate. And that is what we intend to achieve. Peaceful, non-violent, non-cooperation, until you yourself see the wisdom of living, Your Excellency." End of quotation. Martin Luther King Jr. also exercised this resistance. If Martin Luther King Jr. were alive, he would certainly condemn the wave of physical violence sweeping across United States. Still, in 2020, 30 years after the fall of communism, we, Hungarians in Transylvania, often have to oppose the policy of the Romanian government in order to preserve our identity, our culture, etc. We do all this in the spirit of Gandhi, with peaceful, non-violent resistance. Thank you for attention.